Learn English through stories. Intermediate English. The Greedy Milkman. In a quiet valley, one milkman had everything: trust, friends, and the best milk in town. But one small choice could cost him it all. Will greed ruin Henry's life, or will honesty save him? Watch to find out. Henry and Daisy. In a cosy green valley lived a milkman named Henry. Every morning, with a cheerful song, he would milk his cow, Daisy. Her milk was the creamiest and most delicious in the land. The villagers loved Henry, not just for his wonderful milk, but for his kind heart and his honest smile. Milk for the village. With his cart full of fresh, clinking milk bottles, Henry would make his daily rounds through the village. "Good morning, Henry," the villagers would call out from their windows and doors. He would tip his hat and hand them their milk, his face beaming with pride in his simple, honest work. Leo's milk moustache. A young boy named Leo would wait by the window for Henry's arrival each day. His mother, Ilara, would pour him a tall glass of the fresh, creamy milk. "It's the best, Mama," Leo would exclaim, a white moustache on his upper lip. Ilara agreed. Henry's milk was a true delight. A golden carriage passes. One afternoon, a magnificent carriage adorned with gold rolled through the village. Henry watched it pass, a thought creeping into his mind for the very first time. "If only I had more money," he whispered to himself, a flicker of envy dimming the usual sparkle in his eyes. Tempted by the well. The next morning, as he filled his bottles, Henry hesitated. He glanced at the village well, its water clear and cool. "Just a tiny bit won't hurt," he reasoned, pouring a small amount of water into each bottle of milk. His heart beat a little faster than usual with a nervous flutter. First taste of greed. That day, Henry had a few extra bottles of milk to sell. By evening, his pockets felt heavier than ever before. He sat at his table, counting the extra coins he'd earned. The clinking sound was music to his ears, and it drowned out the quiet voice of his conscience. Water over milk. Soon, that little bit of water turned into a little bit more. Henry began adding as much water as there was milk. His coin purse grew fatter, but his smile was no longer genuine. He started to avoid the friendly gazes of the villagers, feeling the weight of his secret. Ilara notices the change. Ilara noticed the change right away. The milk was thin and watery. "Mama, the milk tastes funny," Leo complained, pushing his glass away with a frown. Ilara looked at the pale liquid, her brow furrowed with concern. This was not the rich, creamy milk they were used to getting from Henry. "The village complains." Soon the whole village was talking. "The butter won't churn," said the baker, throwing his hands up in frustration. "My cheese is ruined," cried the farmer's wife. Murmurs of disappointment followed Henry on his rounds. He kept his head down, pretending not to hear their complaints and clutching his coin purse. Shiny boots, sad hearts. With his ill-gotten gains, Henry bought a new fancy waistcoat and shiny black boots. He paraded through the village, hoping to impress everyone with his new wealth, but the villagers just shook their heads sadly. They missed the old Henry, the one with the honest smile and the truly creamy milk. Arthur calls a meeting. The village elder, a wise old man named Arthur, called a meeting. "We must discover what has happened to our friend Henry and his milk," he declared with a firm voice. The villagers agreed. They decided that the next morning they would follow Henry and see what he was really doing. Villagers hide and watch. Before the sun rose, a small group of villagers, led by Arthur, crept towards Henry's farm. They hid behind a low stone wall, their hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and sadness. They all hoped that their suspicions about their once trusted friend were wrong. The truth revealed. From their hiding spot, they saw everything. They watched as Henry milked his faithful cow, Daisy. Then, to their great dismay, They saw him walk to the well and fill bucket after bucket with water, pouring it directly into the milk cans. A collective gasp of disbelief went through the hidden group. Caught in the act. "Henry!" Arthur's voice boomed across the yard. Henry jumped, spilling the watery milk all over his shiny boots. He turned to see the disappointed faces of his friends and neighbours. Elara stood at the front, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. There was nowhere for Henry to hide. Henry's shame. The truth was out. Henry's face burned with shame, and he couldn't look anyone in the eye. He saw the hurt in young Leo's face and the disappointment in Elara's. He realised in that moment that all the gold in the world could not buy back the trust he had so carelessly broken. Empty cart, empty heart. The villagers stopped buying his milk. His cart sat empty day after day, and his new waistcoat felt like a fool's costume. The clinking of his coins no longer sounded like music. It sounded like a constant, sad reminder of his dishonesty. Henry was rich with money, but he was completely alone. Alone with Daisy. Days turned into weeks. Henry sat in his quiet house, the silence broken only by Daisy's lonely moos from the barn. He looked at his reflection in a shiny, unspent coin. He didn't recognise the greedy, unhappy man who was staring back at him. He missed his old, happy self. Facing his reflection. "This is not who I am," Henry declared to the empty room, his voice filled with newfound resolve. He gathered all the money he had made from his watered-down milk into a large sack. With a heavy heart but a determined spirit, he knew what he had to do to make things right. Returning the coins. Henry went from door to door, his head held low in shame. He returned the extra money to every single villager. "I am so sorry," he said, over and over again. "I was foolish and greedy. I hope that one day you can find it in your hearts to forgive me." Elara's honest words. When he knocked on Elara's door, he was the most afraid. He offered her the money, his apology barely a whisper. Elara looked at him, then at Leo, who was hiding behind her skirts. She didn't take the money. "Honesty is worth more than coins, Henry," she said softly but firmly. Fresh start with Daisy. Henry returned to his farm, poorer than when he started, but with a much lighter heart. The next morning he milked Daisy and filled his bottles with pure, creamy milk. There were fewer bottles now, but each one was filled to the brim with honesty. He was ready to earn back his neighbour's trust. Honest milk again. He started his rounds again. At first no one bought his milk. They watched him from their windows, their faces unsure. But Henry didn't give up. Every single day he came with his honest milk and a hopeful, genuine smile, just like he used to in the old days. Leo buys the first bottle. One morning a small voice called out, "Mr. Henry!" It was Leo. He ran out with a coin clutched in his hand. "Mama said we'd like a bottle of your real milk, please." Henry's eyes filled with tears of gratitude as he handed the bottle to the little boy. It was a new beginning. True riches, trust. Slowly, one by one, the villagers started buying his milk again. They saw the change in Henry. He was no longer rich with money, but he was happy. He had learned that the true richness in life comes not from a purse full of coins, but from a heart full of honesty and the trust of good friends. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share for more fun English lessons.